So in this video, I'd like to talk about emergency extraction procedures, burning buildings, and what to do about it. If you're flying an airplane into Jackson Hole, Wyoming, if you've done it before, you know that you're basically flying into a mountain valley. There's lots of terrain, there's lots of things to hit. And if you're doing it in instrument meteorological conditions, IMC, in other words, there's clouds, there's fog, whatever, then obviously there's some hazards which you need to be aware of and plan ahead in case things go bad. And so let's talk about worst case scenario flying an instrument approach into Jackson Hole. You're doing your instrument landing system ILS approach, landing south. You're going down to minimums 200 feet. You have 1/2 mile visibility at the surface, and you're flying a King Air 350, which is ordinarily no problem. But if it's not your day, if it's not your lucky day, and you get down to minimums 200 feet and you see nothing, and you move your power levers up to engage full power to go missed approach, to do a go around to get out of there, and then one of your engines suddenly quits, it dies on you, now you're really in a pickle, because as it turns out, the missed approach procedure requires the performance that's only available if you have both engines working. And so with just one engine, suddenly your pre-planned procedure to get out of there safely isn't going to work. And so instead, you're going to need to very quickly switch over to not the missed approach procedure, but the obstacle departure procedure that you would execute if you were simply departing that airport and needed to ensure that you had terrain clearance if you were to lose an engine on departure. And so there's definitely a few things to think about when shooting an approach into Jackson Hole down at minimums. What are you going to do if you have to go do a missed approach and one engine dies at the same time? And so that's where we talk about emergency extraction procedures. You need to be able to extract yourself from that situation safely and correctly. So in life, as it turns out, there's similar situations we find ourselves in where we need to extract ourselves, or we need to extract others from emergency situations. Many years ago, I had a dream. I'm guessing this is probably 20 years ago. I had just one child, maybe two. I think maybe my second son was just a baby. But in this dream, it was nighttime, and there was this massive building, maybe 30-40 stories high, and it was still under construction, and it had caught on fire. It was doomed to perish. And I found myself in the building looking around, and I found my oldest son, who was about 2 years old, sitting on a catwalk up about the 20th floor in the dark, smoke, fire, and completely helpless. Definitely needed help in knowing and being able to get out of that dangerous situation, being able to extract himself from this burning building. And in that particular scenario, it would have been an easy situation, an easy case for me to simply pick him up and carry him out. But what do you do when you've got full-grown children who are in a burning building and you're not able to carry them? Maybe you gotta go down ladders. Um, who knows? But you're not able to carry them out of that situation. And so, that was a dream slash vision, which I believe was prophetic of the future of a situation I would find myself in later on in life, where my children are in a structure which is as it turns out is not safe, is not a good place to be, and they need to get out. And for all intents and purposes, I would classify that structure as a institution, as a church, which is it's doomed to collapse. It's part of that great and spacious building that is talked about in First Nephi. And so, how do you get these kids out, especially once they're full grown? And I've thought about this for a long time, and I've adopted several different causes. I've had a lot of different projects trying to figure out how I can accomplish this without also destroying my marriage and having utter disaster fall around me. In the Book of Mormon, we read in Alma, in the later chapters, in the war chapters, we have situations where the Lamanites took many of the Nephites prisoners, to include men, women, and children, and they would keep them in these mighty fortress cities protected by walls, and they were prisoners that were made to toil and work. And so Captain Moroni and his other leaders devised a plan whereby they could extract these prisoners out of these cities and get them to safety. And for them, it was a pretty simple plan. As I recall, they executed this a little bit differently on different occasions. In one case, they brought an army nearby and lured the existing army out of the city, and they went traipsing off and got chased off. And then a part of the army remained behind, hidden in the forest. And at night, they would lower into the city weapons of war, so that all these men, women, and children could arm themselves with weapons of war. And then when the daytime came, the portion of the army that was hidden within the forest would come out, surround the city, and then those within the city would, who were prisoners, would show up with all their swords and spears and all that, and say, "Hey, we got you," and that's how they would get out. And so, the Nephites, they were pretty smart. They had a plan that worked quite well in terms of emergency extraction procedures. Now, in real life, sometimes it's not quite that easy. I'm reminded of the Return of the King at the very beginning, where Frodo is taken prisoner in the Tower of Cirith-Ungol, and at the gate of the tower there's a stone statue of some kind of beast, and it had some sort of evil spirit, evil menace that inhabited this statue. And as Sam tried to get past it, he used the phial of Galadriel, which emitted this brilliant bright light, which overpowered the Watcher, and he was able to get in to the tower. And of course, it raised an alarm. There were orcs and goblins that were trying to, that were on the lookout. Short story, spoiler alert, he finds Frodo, he gets him out of there, and then he has to use the phial of Galadriel to overpower the Watcher and get Frodo and himself out of the tower. So it's not this as it turns out, these emergency extraction procedures aren't that simple. It's one thing to get weapons in, it's another thing to actually get them out. There's a watcher. There are those who are going to do their best to make sure that you're not successful. And so in my situation, where I have um, children who are, as it were, in this burning building, my first inclination was to let a certain person know that I'm going to start talking, and the game has changed, and, as it were, to declare open warfare. But I've figured out that that's not a good idea. I've decided that the best way to do this is to talk to my older kids who are at home one at a time, and explain to them, where I'm at, what I believe, and what's going on. And so far, that's actually been working very, very well. And the scriptures tell us some things that are very, very helpful. Number one, we are told that the truth will make you free. And so by arming your loved ones with truth, they can set themselves free. They can escape the tower on their own, as it were, without you having to do everything for them. And so that's been my emergency extraction procedure so far, has been to do my very best to get the Holy Spirit to teach the truth, to inform my kids, especially my older ones, about what's going on, what I believe, and to invite them to do their own reading and research, and to pray, and to determine for themselves what the truth is. And so far, the conversations I've had have been very, very, very positive and very successful. At some point, the watcher at the gate's going to clue into what's going on. But again, I'm just going to have to use the light of truth to get past that situation and to proceed forward. And with any luck, hopefully I can execute that plan with minimal loss. But honestly, I'm feeling like I need to be prepared for anything. And so whatever the sacrifice, whatever the cost, I'm going to do my very, very best to arm my children with truth and with righteousness, and prepare them to make the escape with or without me. And so there you have it. That's the allegory of the burning building and emergency extraction procedures. Thanks for listening.